Week 14 college football playoff rankings are here, and we're taking a look at what's changed and what hasn't. I'm Marisa Flores, joined by Stan Becton of NCAA Digital. We're closer than ever to the fateful Selection Day, Stan. Oregon stays at number one. Notre Dame, though, they're cracking the top five, and after a dominant win over Army, their loss to Northern Illinois, still lingering in my mind a little bit. But do you think the committee got it right by putting them ahead of Miami and Georgia, or is it a case of recency bias?
I think the committee got it right putting them over Georgia, but Miami could get a little bit shaky with whether or not Notre Dame stays above them. I know they have a rivalry dating way back, but Notre Dame, they have to win this week, but Miami, they have a conference championship game that they could play, so that could help them move above the Fighting Irish potentially.
Absolutely. Notre Dame just has that one roadblock in the way ahead of their big title game. Miami, meanwhile, they've been more consistent, but they lack a real signature win. Georgia's SEC resume, though, they won over Tennessee and Texas. They could argue for a higher spot. Meanwhile, Penn State, they're in number four, even with a shaky win over Minnesota. Their strength of schedule, it's a lot stronger than Notre Dame's, but I mean, the win wasn't that impressive, in my opinion at least. Do you think this week Penn State's safe, or could Notre Dame kind of jump over them?
Yeah, like you said, that win was not impressive at all. So Penn State right now, I think they're kind of stable right now. I think the committee consistently has had Penn State up ranked very high. So I think unless they lose, even if they lose, they probably still make the playoff. But unless they lose, I think Penn State probably stays in that top five range. I think the committee just loves the Nittany Lions here. So I think they're probably safe.
Let's look at Tennessee and Indiana. Both of those teams, they're hanging on to playoff spots. Tennessee's at number 8, Indiana's at number 10. Are these two safe, or do you see one or even both of them falling out by selection day?
This is very interesting. I think Tennessee for sure is safe. I think the committee dropping Indiana below Tennessee shows that Tennessee, all they have to do is win and they're in. But Indiana, on the other hand, there's a team in Clemson that is below them that I think could have the potential to maybe jump in front of them if they beat a South Carolina team, depending on how they beat them. If it's a blowout win, that might be something where, oh, this is something where this team now has a ranked win that Indiana doesn't, and they move them up. So Indiana, they might not be safe. It might still be up in the air based on what these teams below it do throughout the rest of the season.
Right, Indiana, they've lacked ranked wins, but the chance to silence doubters on Saturday, they had the chance to pull through, but they just couldn't do it. Meanwhile, Stan, who has been pulling through, like you mentioned, Clemson. They're at number 12 with a big path through the ACC title game if they beat South Carolina, like you mentioned. Can a team like Clemson or Alabama, though, make it in, or is that just closed?
I think a three-loss team like Alabama could make it into the playoffs depending on what happens in front of it. I think Clemson as well, even though they might not have as many losses as Alabama, I think Clemson could rise depending on what happens in their game. But I also think Clemson, they have to keep their eyes set on that SEC or ACC, excuse me, championship game. They could move in front of a team like Miami if Miami loses. So we have to wait and see if they can control their own destiny.
Alabama is ranked higher at number 13, but the loss to Oklahoma, it damages their reputation a little bit. Boise State, though, they remain the number 4 seed because of the automatic qualifier rule, but Tulane, sneaky Tulane, they're creeping up at number 17. Could they actually pass the Big 12 champ for that final playoff spot?
Yeah, I think if Tulane wins the American, I think they could potentially move in front of the Big 12, especially if that Big 12 champion is not in Arizona State, which is the only Big 12 team ranked above it. And it's only by one spot. So, really, if it's some shaky play and Tulane just dominates these last few games, I mean, Army was ranked 1 week ago. I don't think they'll be ranked by the time they reach the American Championship game in 2 weeks. But I think that Tulane could easily make the playoffs, and the Big 12 is on the outside looking in, so they could cannibalize itself down the stretch.
Tulane, they have a weaker resume, but Boise State, they have a strong finish that can kind of, close the gap. Arizona State or Iowa State, I'm sorry, them winning the Big 12 title could make the scenario, all the more plausible. Now, real quick, taking a quick pause, I want to do this bracket breakdown. Here's how it looks right now. Oregon, Texas, Miami, and Boise State, they all have the byes. Ohio State, though, they would face Arizona State in the 5 versus 12 matchup. Which first round game do you think could deliver the biggest surprise?
Yeah, I think the biggest first round game is that game right there, Georgia. Georgia, if they don't win the SEC, that's a team that's going to be motivated. And I think that Georgia team in the first round is going to be hard for anyone to beat. So that will be the game I'm looking for. So, of course, all these other games could depend on who, plays where, of course, weather. But I think Georgia, rain, shine, sleet, snow, I think whoever they play, that's going to be a hard team to knock out in that first round.
Yeah, Georgia a little shaky in the beginning, but we see them climbing the ranks which, once more. Who we also see climbing the ranks, though, SMU. I know we kind of talked about it's kind of like a taste of the 80s now that, they're back in the CFP top 25. Their offense, it's electric, but do you think they can handle the Notre Dame defense?
SMU, I don't know about SMU against that Notre Dame defense. I mean, it all depends on that quarterback, Jennings. He's I'm not too confident in him facing that Notre Dame defense. I mean, Notre Dame just has those guys, they can just keep throwing at you at every level. I mean, they got the guys in the trenches, they got the linebackers, they got the secondary. It's going to be hard for a SMU team if they play at Notre Dame.
With all this being said, we've got just two more rankings to look forward to. Still looking ahead, what's the biggest game in this week, though, that you think could shake up all these rankings?
Yeah, you talked about that SEC just a minute ago. I think also in that SEC this week, Texas versus Texas A&M. That game is going to impact these rankings. Texas A&M just lost last week, but it's a rivalry game. You don't know what can happen. If Texas A&M beats Texas, could we be looking at a Texas team that misses the playoffs? I think we could. Texas has 0 ranked wins. Alabama, on the other hand, they have a win over Georgia. They have a win over South Carolina, who are both ranked. They have a win over Missouri, who's ranked. Ole Miss has a win over South Carolina. Ole Miss has a win over Georgia. Clemson, if they win, they would have a win over South Carolina. Meanwhile, Texas has 0 ranked wins. Texas could be on the outside looking in if they lose that game. So, and Texas A&M will be in the SEC championship game. So it's like this game could really shake up the entire rankings. We could think we have a perfect picture right now, and then next week it's like, oh my gosh, we have to tear this picture up, go call CVS and go print out some more pictures. This could be crazy.
All eyes will be on that game Saturday for sure. And if Texas does lose, do you think that opens the door for another SEC team or Notre Dame?
I think it opens the door for Notre Dame to move up in these rankings, potentially get like a maybe an even better first round opponent that's a little bit weaker. And then I think another SEC team has to take their spot. I don't know about this committee leaving out that many SEC teams if Texas loses. So I think another SEC team has to move up and get in and take Texas' spot if they get left out.
A lot to look forward to this Saturday, and clearly week 14 is setting the stage for one of the most exciting finishes that we're going to see in the playoff race. Can Texas and Indiana hold on, or will Tulane and Boise State still shake things up? There's a lot still unanswered until Selection Day, but in the meantime, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.